Joining me right now to discuss everything that is happening with the Lakers and the Clippers, California Post superstar, reporter, our guy, the great Khobi Price. Khobi, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing even better with that introduction. That's incredible. I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Listen, you are the best, my friend. I want to go in reverse order here, and I want to start with what we were just talking about with the Clippers because, listen, this whole thing is a mess. It's a bad look. I think the NBA had a way to kind of get out of this, and frankly, they dropped the ball on it. What are you hearing on the latest when it comes to Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers, the Raptors, and the NBA investigation?
I mean, a lot of what you were saying in your segment right there, just in terms of, I reached out to the league myself because, they did mention in their statement after the ESPN report came out, and they said there were, I think, I forget the exact phrasing, but they mentioned there were inaccuracies, right, in the story. So I reached out to the league and I asked, okay, what exactly are the inaccuracies? Because it wasn't just like a five-sentence report; it was a pretty lengthy story. So what exactly are you basically contesting? Didn't hear back from multiple people I reached out to. And I think honestly at this point, it just kind of like we are saying, it's a bad look for the league on a multitude of fronts. This Clippers Kawhi situation is an issue on its own. But I've said this before. This is also a integrity of the league problem. And it's not just this. I mean, I know we'll talk about the Lakers later, which I don't think that's as much of an integrity of the league problem. But we're not that far removed from Jonte Porter getting banned from the league because of after an investigation that revealed that he leaked confidential health information to gamblers and then limited his own playing time for prop bets, right? We also have the Terry Rozier ongoing situation not that long ago. These are situations that are again compromising the league's integrity, and that's the most important thing that the league, one of the most important things that the league can have, because if the league doesn't have the trust of the public, of the fans, of stakeholders, then what do you truly have? So at least as of right now, I mean, again, the ESPN report came out. It is what it is. Obviously, the investigation. The other troubling part about the right now is the investigation ongoing or is it closed? The league's coming out and
Great
making these
point.
statements, but why? And even to your point about, I think you had Pablo Torre, the clip from him. Where are they at in terms of the investigation? Adam Silver spoke in Las Vegas during Summer League. He made it sound like this could go on for a little while, but how are you able to say, there's what's going to come out of this to come out of the investigation if certain determinations haven't been made? So that's also confusing a little bit. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, and I'll take that, but there has been a troubling communication gap from the league. It's almost like at a certain point they should just say, "Hey, we're not going to comment on it regardless until everything's done, or we
Yeah.
will comment on it in the form of sanctions or non-sanctions. We'll comment on it at the end." They're commenting, or there's things being said during the process, which to me is troublesome as well
Yeah,
and
Kobe,
confusing.
I think you nailed it. And it didn't have to be this chaotic and this confusing. And, the league basically had a mulligan with the trade, and they should have ruled right then and there, even before Summer League started, because the minute Adam Silver starts talking, then things get really out of control. I want to go to the Lakers. And, first and foremost, let's go back to last week. Did you see this original sale coming? Because I was absolutely blindsided by it. Take us through your reaction, what you heard, what ultimately you were able to unearth after the sale with Iger, Kushner, Walter.
Yes, I mean, to answer your original question, no, I'll be honest. I did not see this sale coming. It did really come out of left field. And I think, speaking with Bob Iger specifically, it makes a lot of sense. This was something that Bob Iger and Josh Kushner, for people who don't know, they were pursuing the potential Las Vegas, the NBA's potential expansion to Las Vegas. And they were one of the main ownership tandems, ownership groups that were, that could have secured ownership of the Vegas team. But, and Bob Iger told me this on the record, they got basically word that Mark Walter could be potentially selling, and Josh Kushner made a call to Mark Walter, and they really worked it out in the matter of over a weekend, within three-ish days, to find an agreement for Mark Walter to sell the Lakers to Josh Kushner and Bob Iger at a valuation, a historic valuation of $12.5 billion. So all that being said, I didn't know, and there were a lot of people within the organization, also outside throughout the league, who had no clue this was coming. So once Ramona Shelburne, of ESPN, kudos to her for breaking the story, puts that out. I mean, for me, it was, time to work, time to, figure out what's going on. And, you have the conversation with Bob Iger, learn that, a lot of this, like, in terms of capital, uh, Thrive Eternal will be part of this deal as well, which is a company that Josh Kushner founded. There are limitations to just how much that entity can be involved. I believe it's about 20% of the purchase based off of league rules, but it'll also be a lot of capital coming specifically from Josh Kushner's side. I know it's been reported, put out there that he has a net worth around $5 billion. So he'll be, probably the money part of it. And then you do have Bob Iger, where it's looking like, once the dust settles, he'll be the one, Iger that is, being most involved or more involved in the day-to-day operations of the Lakers.
So your reporting is great, and you're right. The Godfather offer with Iger and Kushner, and they were rumored, reported to be in the mix for the Vegas expansion team, and they made an offer to Walter that he couldn't refuse. So you had that world exclusive, you reference it, with Bob Iger. We've talked about it on the show, and you asked him a great question. And it's even better of a question and answer now that we know what's going on with Jeannie and her siblings, about Jeannie staying in her role. And there was one little line, and I read it, and I thought about it, and then I said to myself, well, it's probably just a throwaway line. But it wasn't nothing when Iger said, if things change with regards to Jeannie. Take us through the conversation with Iger, how it relates to Jeannie, and what the hell happened yesterday with Jeannie and the Buss family?
Yeah, I know that specific, the entire quote, but then that specific part of the quote conversation, caught a lot of eyeballs, and understandably so. I think, context is important to note that, he didn't specify what he meant by if things change, but, reading between the lines, usually when NBA teams are sold, there's an opportunity for the other, because usually it's very rare for an NBA team or any sports franchise to be 100% owned by a certain person, an entity, a group, right? So typically you have minority owners, stakeholders, shareholders in the organization. A lot of times when a new majority owner comes through, there's an opportunity for the minority owners to sell their shares, sell their stakes of the franchise. So I don't want to put words in his mouth. Obviously, he said what he said within that quote, but I could imagine, in the back of his mind, there's a potential, and there always is potential. This is not just the Lakers, but any of the team. There's potential for the Buss family to sell. They may be looking, and we kind of see it. They may be looking to, take advantage of this higher valuation of the Lakers. Maybe they'll want to sell, and if they do sell, that obviously would change Genie's position as governor. So then you keep that and you look into what happened yesterday on Monday, and the siblings, five siblings outside of Jeannie, they vote to sell the franchise, which in their positions makes a lot of sense. You already sold a significant amount of the franchise or your stakes in the franchise, shares in the franchise last year, made a lot of money. You can make even more money with this higher valuation, and then completely, you move on from the franchise that, quite frankly, that's caused a lot of, I would imagine, a lot of stress, a lot of dysfunction within the siblings or around the siblings. So that part, but then that's the part where we don't know, because obviously, at least as of right now, Jeannie Buss still remains the Lakers governor. And after the letter her attorney sent to her siblings' attorneys, it looks like there's a possibility where that's going to remain the truth, or remain the case beyond today and beyond the eventual sale of the Lakers from Mark Walter to Josh Kushner and Bob Iger, because that still has not been made official and may not be for some time.
Khobi, do you get a sense, just based upon the people you've talked to in the last 24 hours, literally since the multiple reports yesterday, any idea? We could talk about legalese, we could talk about the nature of the Buss family. How is this going to play out with the Busses?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm still trying to get a better handle on myself. I mean, there's a possibility that this could be taken to court. One part that was important amongst many was that part of what was being asked is that the siblings recognize Jeannie Buss as the controlling owner. I think that was the exact phrasing they used, controlling owner, you could say governor of the Lakers, and to basically, retract the votes or basically retract the sale and, acknowledge that Jeannie hasn't approved of this. And the argument that Jeannie's lawyer is making is that the siblings don't have the power to execute this sale. And the siblings' argument is that there was a tag along clause when they sold the team to Mark Walter, and that gives them the power again with the trustees in which they could make the sale. But Jeannie's side or Jeannie's lawyer, excuse me, attorney is arguing that's not the case, and citing a 2017 court order, which basically, I'm trying to take this legalese, this court information, and change it to plain English, basically saying that the purpose of this of all of this is to make sure that Jeannie remains, for her life, remains in this position for the remainder of her life, unless there's another court order that essentially says otherwise. There has not been another court order that says otherwise, so from Jeannie's side, they're arguing that this is still relevant. This is still how it should be, and unless Jeannie is voting and says it's time to sell the team, then the Buss family part of it cannot be sold.
All right. How about the Lakers on the court? I know there's a lot here. It's wild. Because Khobi, I think the Laker fan is terrific. Seriously. I think that Lakers fans are smart, they're passionate. Look, I think the Lakers had a terrific offseason. And I still think LeBron has a lot left in the tank. I think he's going to be great for Philadelphia. I like the way they built the Luka Doncic Lakers. And I think that's what they did. They built a team around Luka Doncic, and I'll give everyone involved credit for that. I think this roster, J.J. Redick can maximize when you look at his skill set. Now, obviously, there's going to be chaos. When you're doing your job for the California Post, you're going to be asking Rob Pelinka and J.J. Redick about ownership of the Buss family and lawsuits. So how is this all going to impact the 2026, 2027 LA Lakers?
Well, I mean, even if it's not from a roster standpoint, because the roster at this point is kind of filled out, right? And the other thing about players, players play, right? Coaches coach for the most part. I was gonna say general managers general manage, but that doesn't fit as well. But that's the point that actually is interesting. Again, players play, coaches coach. What does this mean for Rob Pelinka?
Yep.
The architect of essentially of this roster of the Lakers. It'd be helpful if some of this was, sorted out before one of the most consequential off seasons for the Lakers in recent history. But at least from an on-court standpoint, I mean, the roster seems kind of where it is right now. They have to let go of one player before the regular season starts. That's not that stressful. That will kind of take care of itself. But where does Rob Pelinka kind of sit in all of this? It felt like, with Jeannie Buss as governor, Rob Pelinka's security, the job security, was higher just because, the relationship between Jeannie and Rob. Jeannie has empowered Rob over the course of basically almost a decade since originally hiring him. As in his role under Magic Johnson, I think that was in 2017. Like that relationship has grown. Obviously, they go way back. Back when he was Kobe Bryant's agent, a longtime agent. So that's the impact that could be more felt. And then even beyond the actual on-court product, because it was interesting enough, is that what's today, August 18th. The Laker players, they're going to be going out to Slovenia, very shortly. I'm saying maybe some of them have left for the Luka Doncic sponsored mini camp out in Slovenia. So I'm sure that will be a fun time out. Which could be a fly on the wall for some of those conversations. But there's a lot going on. But I feel you mentioned Laker fans, a lot. Laker employees, not the ones we're talking about, like the Rob Pelinkas and the guys at the top. But like the day-to-day employees, the people who just got hired by Mark Walter, like people who they've had significant layoffs over the last basically year, and there are a lot of people still there who saw their bosses get let go or their friends get let go, people they've bonded with and worked with for a while get let go. What does this mean for them? People are kind of the way that I would just kind of describe it to kind of put this in a bow. The Lakers are kind of in a holding pattern right now, not from a roster standpoint. The roster is kind of figured out. But just a holding pattern in terms of what does the basketball operations look like in August 2027? What does the business side look like in August 2027? What does the ownership split look like in August 2027? I'm just basically saying a year from now. the roster will kind of sort itself out. It's sorted out at least right now and for the foreseeable future. But they are like day-to-day people, day-to-day operations that are kind of in a holding pattern. And until this ownership situation gets resolved, till this governorship with Jeannie Buss gets resolved, I don't see that changing.
Khobi, you're the best. Keep up the unbelievable work, my friend. We will keep reading and following on the California Post, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
No, I appreciate you.